Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is March 13th, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And because it's Wednesday, you know we're going to be talking about all the news, all the breaking AI news that has come up in the last 7-ish days. We really did try to do a good job of if we think it came out, unless it was right after on Wednesday of last week. But we do a pretty good job of stuff that's come out really in the last 7 days. And you know, this is fun because we don't pre-plan before. We rarely have conversations about what we want to share. So there's some overlap. But every single Wednesday, I walk away learning something from somebody on the show that I didn't know was going on in the world of AI. And that, you know, as much as I'm subscribed to way too many newsletters and, you know, feel like I have my finger on the post and we host this show together, I always learn something. So today we have Junmi, Beth, Andy, and I'm Brian. We'll see if I think it would only be Robert would pop in today if he has time. Aaron is out and Carl is away this week. So it may just be the four of us, but that's okay because there's always just so much to talk about. And you know, as always, I always like to open it up to you guys. Is the fire burning underneath your seat? Is there one thing where you're like, man, if we don't get to this, it is a wasted show? So I'll open it up to you guys. What do you got? What's the big thing of the week? And we'll try to spend just a little time on it so we have time for everything else.
I enjoyed the fact that 5 of this year's finalists for the Pulitzer Prize admitted that they used AI as part of their story processing. I think that's a great adoption story. It's pretty straightforward, and I think what it signals to me, anyways, that those in those fields, because we saw a lot of pushback really early on, and in fact, I think the New York Times still has that that suit against OpenAI, but it's an indicator of, yes, you can adopt AI as part of your process and it can improve your work process. And that's kind of the focus on that I know that I've spent on trying to increase AI literacy. It's like, no, this is a tool for you to enhance your work process, enhance your life process, and things like that, even though there's a lot of negative outlook out there.
Yeah, I love that. It kind of points that, like, it doesn't take genius away from anybody. If anything, yeah, sure, there's going to be copycats, people who claim that they did everything that was really through AI, and they're going to get called out. And God knows we haven't seen the end of this. There's going to be somebody who used AI way too much and was up for an award. We'll get the award, and then we'll find out 6 months later that they did none of the work themselves, right? There was zero input from the human on it. And those are going to suck, and people are going to say, see, told you so. But I kind of like what you're saying, Jimmy, which is like, you got finalists for a Pulitzer Prize, and they're saying, hey, we use AI as part of this. That should not diminish the quality of what they're putting out there. And so I love that things are being, you know, rated on how people react to it, whatever the criteria are for it. That's a really cool story. I like that.
All right, and now the real story. Devin.
Yes.
Figured Devin might be on everybody's list here. Yeah. Meet Devin. All right. So do you want to give a quick rundown of what Devin is? And then I can
sure. Yeah. Okay. So Cognition Labs, they went ahead and dropped their big project, Devin. And they're touting it as a full AI software engineer, right? So this is not this is not how we've seen AI used for as an assistant. I hesitant to use the word co-pilot because, you know, that's used a bunch of different ways, confusingly. But there's a lot of AI assistants out there. Like GitHub came out with their assistant, and people have shown ChatGPT and new Claude 3 in coding assistants and things like this. But the big thing that Devin provides is it can figure out and plan steps for approaching a problem. right? A software engineering problem. So that's its biggest impact. Not only can we ask the LLM or ask the AI, oh, hey, I want to create this thing, help me write out the code. Devin can now take a problem that we're trying to propose, plan out the steps of execution, go find the information that it needs, then use that information then to solve the problem. And that is what we've been talking about over the last weeks and months, is an agent. So that's the biggest part of what Devin represents.
And that's like a fine-tuned situation out of the box, right? So some people prompt, first think through step by step, lay things out step by step, go through your step by step and see if there are other steps by step that you would like to have it do, right? And this is all within this package. It's not going to make images for you. It's not going to book your flights. This is what it does. And it does it in ways that engineers are freaking out about on Twitter, which is just fun. Yeah, not freaking out like, oh God, my job is gone, but like, wow, this is amazing. Because the other thing is that it comes at a time where people are noticing that if you ask ChatGPT to give you code, it gives you like the first part of the code and then says, you see where I'm going, right? Like you can do the rest. GitHub also is like, I don't know. I gave you a couple words. Can't you finish the function on your own? Like, I mean, it's just like the skill that we have been relying on has tanked. And so this comes at a really great time.
Yeah, ChatGPT should be renamed Truncate GPT, because that's what it likes to do more than anything else, is give you half answers. And I could tell you the rest of this and you're like, yeah, that's what I need. And it's like, here's 25%. Where do you want to go with it from here? Like the other 75%. I'd like the other 75% is what I would like. And then you will fight it tooth and nail to get it. I have it up here on the screen. I will tell you this, and I'd be curious to hear your answer on this too, Andy. Just like, cool, not surprising. Like, I'm not shocked by this by any means. When you look at what they have on the screen here, and I have it up and I have it paused at the moment, but it's like basically a dashboard with 4 windows in it so they can show you what's going on. And I mean, it's cool because like they watch it working. Let's assume this isn't a Google type situation where they pick the very, very cherry picked best solution and then ran it through 1,000 times, and this was the only one that got the answer right and produced it right. We're hoping that's not the case, but it's always tough when people can't play with it.
People can.
Well, the guy I saw at the end of this was like, let us know and we'll run it through for you. I didn't get the impression that they could do it for
Oh,
they could do it.
Got it. Yes, you're right.
So like, still maybe, but also let's say 1,000 suggestions come in. Are they still potentially cherry picking those? Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. Anyway, not surprising. It's like, yeah, this makes sense. Like you were saying, Jimmy, like here's my problem. And it's like, then it goes and makes a task list. And it's like, this is how I think I'm going to solve the problem. Then it goes out to the internet and says, okay, what do I need to solve this problem? Then it runs into problems and then decides there on like a little side move, like, oh, I ran into a problem. What could I do to solve that? Let me go back to the internet and try to solve for that. Oh, I need to download something really quick. Great. I have a debugging software. Great. Now I know where to go next. And then it gets the answer, which is really the definition of an agent, because they only put the one input at the beginning and it ran itself all the way through all of that problem decision making and came out with the desired outcome that the human was looking for. I mean, I kind of feel like, yeah, this is really cool, but also, yeah, this is exactly what I would expect to see.
Well, it's exactly what we want. But I don't know that I would have expected it this soon.
Yeah.
The advanced reasoning and planning skills within a large language model or any deep learning network, those are, like there are hints of that happening. But here's an example where they've applied it to a pretty complex thing, which is, okay, here's a problem that needs to be solved by software. Now you go out and figure out how to solve it and then deliver the code. Oh, not only deliver the code, but actually deploy the code and set it up and make it happen. So surprising to me is that Cognition Labs, aptly named, by the way, they're working on human level cognitive skills like executive function that's demonstrated here very clearly in the context of coding, but it can be applied presumably to any task. So it is relevant to every kind of agent that we want to deploy ultimately, not just ones that will, create software. And so I'm delighted and surprised. But the presentation of it at this point and the accomplishment of satisfactory conclusions of such coding projects is not at the level of, okay, it's absolutely, it's an order of magnitude better than what any of the other large language models like Code Interpreter and so on can do. And I think the measurement is like, if Code Interpreter was able to do 2% of the problems presented to it, this one can do 13% of the problems presented to it.
Right.
It's a major advance, and no other large language model or lab out there that we know of yet has been able to announce this kind of competence with reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it makes sense that it's in this field too, because software engineering is pretty consistent, right? Coding languages are pretty consistent. Documentation is pretty consistent. All of these resources are available when trying to solve a problem. And the part that really intrigues me for application or implementation now is software review and bug fixes, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of time, and this goes back to the whole low-hanging fruit idea for AI or the mundane task, is a bug is submitted, this thing's not working the right way. All right, then the coder goes in, or the engineer goes in and looks at it line by line. Oh, is there any obvious errors? And then moves it up from there and escalates and whatnot. But Devin can handle and lift that whole part in the beginning, right? That's one of the first implementations I see. It's like, oh, all right, cool. Bug fix comes in, activate Devin. Oh, it found something. Okay, let's get the human in there and review the fix and things like that. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, when we think about assistants, you want to be able to be in a dialogue with the assistant and kind of shape its direction and make it arrive at something. This is capable of doing like a fire and forget missile. Okay, go, and it's going to go out there and find its way, and then come back to you later with a solution. But it also has been trained to do collaboration. So yes. it reports progress in real time to the sort of supervising coder. It accepts feedback. Oh, I think you might want to think about this thing while you're doing it. And it works together with the coder who's using Devin as an assistant. But it's pregnant with the possibilities of being a software engineer on its own right, who gets assignments just alongside every other coding engineer, and doesn't need a collaborator, but will come back with something. But then again, I hasten to point out that like 20% of the time, it's going to come back with a really fine solution in 80% of the cases right at the moment. But remember, with AI, what you see
today, the
worst it's ever going to be.
Right.
It'll learn much faster than we could possibly learn.
It can also help you learn unfamiliar tech. So the Proper Prompter on X came out with 9 things. They're fond of those lists. 9 things that this can do. And the first item in the list is learn unfamiliar tech. And that being able to just even if you're just 25% faster, that's an amazing option for being able to do stuff. There's also someone who has completed Upwork skills jobs using Devin as well. So it's definitely an interesting and going to be a disruptive technology.
I'll say the last thing on Devin real quick so we can move on to other news stories is I will just say my ignorance on it. So I saw the 13% that you were referencing, Andy, about how it gets it right 13%. And my initial reaction to that was like, what the hell? We're getting excited about 13%, but it's all about relevance, right? So then you go,
Mhm.
oh, the next best is somewhere between 2 and 4. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, 13% is really impressive. But I was laughing at myself yesterday when I read about this because just my initial ignorance of like 13% and everybody's losing their mind over this. Like, oh, that's because nobody's even close to 13% at the current time or whatever. So it was a nice wake up for me because I'm not into like I don't do dev and things like that. So, anyway. Okay. Other news. I have one really quick one. I have two quick ones that I can just rattle off real quick. One, I was excited last night to find out that if you are using Copilot Pro, so let's just stop real quick and make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. Okay. That we're talking about Microsoft's Copilot, used to be called Bing Chat. Now they call it Copilot, like everything else they do. And Copilot Pro would be the paid version, the $20 a month version, very similar to ChatGPT Plus or Gemini Advanced. If I get all the names right, it's the paid version of Copilot. It used to be Bing Chat. Okay, so you know what it is. Well, they've had it for a while, and they uses GPT 4.0 Turbo, I think it is, and it has some uptimes, and anyway, it's just a different version of like sort of ChatGPT. Well, they just came and gave the option to build custom GPTs inside your Copilot Pro account. So naturally, I had to go check that out. I was telling you guys about it last night. I have a post that's going out right around now on LinkedIn. And essentially, it was really cool. And I'll just share my screen super quick just to show what the back end looks like in case anybody's curious. But it looks similar to ChatGPT, but it's not the full thing. So this is what it looks like on the back. You still have your name, your description. So more or less, it's just a toned down version of what you would see in the custom GPT builder inside of OpenAI. One of the things I immediately don't like is you can't expand the window for instructions, which would drive me nuts. That's one of the things that we hated about Respell early on. ChatGPT got that right off the bat, and they gave you an expanded window for you to write instructions. I mean, who wants to have to write all that in there and not be able to see it? So they need to fix that. You can still upload documents here. You can see that the first test I did was my movie mashup one. You can do file uploads. You'll notice here there's nothing that says anything like code interpreter down here. Not really sure if that's baked in or just not really an option within Copilot, but it would be missing if we were to compare it apples to apples. But it does have web browsing and DALL-E image generation. Now, I will say very quickly, where'd you go?
While you're saying that, I just want to point out how similar this is and how clear it is that it's based on custom GPT's architecture.
Yeah.
Because
for sure.
it has the top navigation is create and configure, identical to custom GPT.
Right.
And if I could,
well, those billion-dollar investments got to pay off with something, man.
if I could find what I ran yesterday, I was going to show you guys something, but obviously it's reloaded itself, and now I would have to go poke around to figure out how I go and see my previous history. Yeah, where's my chats?
It's gonna be under Brian, I think,
because that's the actual Copilot. You can see that I made right there. But
so another limitation of the current implementation of custom GPT's Copilot.
Weird. Okay, well, that's that. And that was the fast one. And then the other one really quick was I was talking about it was Inflection 2.5. They're the ones behind Pi. We have talked about Pi several times on this show over the months, which is anytime we're in AI is impressive to say we'll be talking about them for months. Pi is a great app. I think everybody should download it and play with it. It's very easy. It's one of the first ones where you could have a natural language conversation back and forth, just you and your mic and back and forth. So I thought, oh, let me jump back into Pi because I hadn't played with it in a while. I'll be honest, I kind of use the voice part of the ChatGPT app more. And so I thought, let me jump back in there and see if I hear any differences. And despite it taking away my Australian or British voice on there that I loved so much, it was now a guy, and I naturally didn't like it as much. I wanted my British voice back. But nonetheless, Pi did a great job. We had a great conversation just before the show talking about what would be an advanced version or an AI future version of trivia. Because if you've ever done trivia, like everybody's like, put your phones away, and everybody's in booths in the bar, and who knows if everybody's just looking up the stuff on internet. And it's kind of like internet kind of quick internet kind of killed trivia. So I was like, well, what would be a trivia game if you said, no, just the exact opposite. Everybody open up Pi. Pi is now your AI teammate, and we're going to ask you questions that require deeper understandings. And it took us a while, but it actually did come back with some cool things about like, what if we were to pick one animal, which would be the most sarcastic? And so you think, okay, I don't know, I have a lot of opinions about that maybe. And Pi would be there to give you like its suggestion. And you as a team could decide to go with what Pi was saying or not. Now, that doesn't necessarily have one right answer, so the point structure is a little different. But what it was suggesting is like, hey, you could just decide to give out points as the host based on what you think is the best answer. You could have people come up and act it out, and they could get bonus points if they were willing to act out being cats or something like that. I thought, okay, this is entertaining. This is fun. I would totally go do this at some restaurant or bar and watch people make fools of themselves and assign points. And then everybody at the end could like vote unanimously on like, oh, we loved when Beth's team got up and acted out that thing. It was hilarious, and we give 100 points. Everybody agrees, Beth. And then Beth's team gets like a $5 gift card to that bar or restaurant or whatever. So it's a really cool way to think about trivia nights that don't penalize the internet, but actually turn it on its head and say, no. Like,
Right.
how could we use this together? So that was my experience with Pi. I just want to share that really quick. Go check it out. They're saying that Inflection 2.5 is as good as GPT-4 and Gemini, and it's a leading LLM. I'll let you guys go check it out and decide.
So I want to comment on that. Pi is and has been, because of what they call the emotional intelligence, EQ of Pi, has been one of the most natural voice interaction platforms out there. And now they say they're adding IQ, giving it more smarts in 2.5. And they're probably tuning up better the dialogue back and forth and the listening capabilities that Pi has.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah,
It doesn't cut you off.
I want to compare it to something that a colleague of ours, Tyler Fisk, posted about yesterday on LinkedIn. He's putting up Bland.ai, and he has a beautiful natural conversation with Bland. That product is focused on phone conversations for outreach. You have outbound calling with an AI phone voice that's very natural. It's very human, like it's passing the Turing test in his opinion. And in his video, he has this really, really beautiful and fluid conversation with Bland AI. Well, I said, fantastic, I'm going to try this. I went in and tried it. Immediately started interrupting me in the middle of my question and then apologizing and saying, I apologize, didn't understand your question. And I said, but can you please give me more context? Yeah, well, what I meant about that was, I apologize. I'm sorry. It drove me crazy very, very quickly. Now, I think that might have been a glitch that was happening because his conversation was very smooth. So I don't want to say that happens to everybody, but I quit out of frustration with Bland.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I wonder if there's a temperature gauge for cadence, because
there's also there's a retail version and like an assistant version. So the retail version is more finely tuned to be able to engage in, like, if it doesn't interrupt you in my in the demos that I've seen, and if you interrupt it stops speaking. Right?
Well,
it just like a human would.
I hope you're right. I hope that was because their free web interface version is, because normally this is done through an SDK or through an API,
right,
and built into a product that's actually doing outbound telephone calls and interacting and collecting information from the person on the other end, who may or may not know that it's an AI they're talking to, if it's really doing well. But I did the same one that Tyler used in his demo, and it was really frustrating.
Okay.
So I'll just share this really quick because I was reading this as you were talking. This is back to Pi, by the way, but I just shared it on my screen. It says an average conversation with Pi lasts 33 minutes. I honestly think mine was probably 33. It was around that right before the show. I talked to it for a while, and it was totally smooth. It never interrupted me, not once through the whole thing, Andy. It was actually really cool. It says about 60% of people who talk to Pi on any given week return the following week. And at the bottom here, it's got 4 billion messages exchanged, 6 million monthly active users, 60% week over week retention, 33-minute average session length. 10% of sessions are over 1 hour, and they have 1 million daily active users. So just wanted to share that really quick because, like, yeah, Pi. I don't know. Pi is great, actually. And now it's really seeing this. And right before the show, this has really made me want to go back and actually start using Pi even more on a day-to-day, because it really is. It was one of our favorites. I think, Andy, you brought it to us early on, and we played around and did a whole show about it. And, you know, they're getting better. So go check out Pi for sure. That's Pi, by the way, if you're curious. It's not PIE. It's Pi.
And use the iPhone or Android application. That's the best way to get introduced to Pi.
For sure.
Just it's on your phone. Great companion. Talk to Pi.
So the other part of this announcement, which was shown in Brian's screen when he was showing it, that was not part, to my understanding, of Pi when we were first using it, is that now you can get access to the model behind it. Right. So that you can interact, you can create with that backend. And if I remember correctly, they're one of the people who announced it and made it available on the day that they announced it. Like, wow.
And shockingly, no Perplexity agreement.
Not yet.
Like, usually when these things are announced these days, it's like, and also we're working with Perplexity. You're like, of course you are.
Speaking of Perplexity, they're adding Yelp data to their chatbot now for searches.
I think that's worse.
Really?
Yeah, well, I hate Yelp. I do.
Okay. Well, I mean, beyond not liking Yelp, I like the idea of them bringing in alternate ways to do research, and that's kind of what they were highlighting, is that it's not just here's the information from the website, but now you can have access to, well, here is some opinions on whatever you're searching for, which I think just increases the knowledge base and gives you a better, more rounded answer to whatever you're trying to research.
Cool. All right.
Okay, I'll leave it there. We have too much to cover. I'll leave that there.
So I would be remiss if I were not talking about what Salesforce announced and is now starting to become available through last week was TDX, which is the developer conference. They Trailblazer DX. Their things are all called Copilot and Copilot Studio. These are Salesforce Copilot Studio, and to my knowledge, they have zero to do with Microsoft and Microsoft's Copilot Studio, because these are regular words that people just use
as
for these functions. As is GPT. So Copilot is natural interface, and what's starting to happen is the dream of that everybody could see what that was possible. So now users can not just interact with, like, hey, give me a list of blah 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 in natural language, which has been available for a little bit of time, but now, like, do some analysis with it. So one of the examples that they showed was a sales professional logging in and saying, okay, so what's my highest probability and highest profit, highest revenue generating opportunity today? And so it takes the data and gives you that, and then gives you like, okay, so how should I approach this, right? So it's literally now getting to a place where you can interact with your data in a way that is intelligence, right? And you can just be a user and not need to know how to code. It can also spin up automations, which in Salesforce are called flows. So you could conceivably, as a service professional, say, okay, so we're going to escalate this, and we're going to, I don't know, give things that you do when you escalate a thing, because those are based on your particular Salesforce instance. Those used to be a bunch of clicks, right? And it could be one click that initiated a flow. Now, this is starting to be a possibility where that can be an intuitive, right? Somebody programmed it, but something that can be initiated through a natural conversation as opposed to a click of a button. So this doesn't mean like devs and admins and app builders aren't still useful. We're still like good here, but it does mean that the user experience is starting to be smoother and smoother and smoother. And there are tools for the devs and the admins as well. The other thing that they did, which I'm so excited about, is that there are now right now 2 Trailhead trails where you can train up on this. So.
Cool.
So go find out.
Okay.
Meet me on the trails. Yeah.
Here's a couple. So Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he's been in the news a lot lately because NVIDIA, right? But it's like the 800-pound gorilla in the world of compute. And he says in a recent interview that NVIDIA's GPUs are so much more advanced than the competition that if a company were to get their competitors' GPUs for free, it would be a strategically costly mistake for them.
Oh, great.
That's pretty bold. And then a companion to that, Meta, Zuckerberg, announced a new initiative that's going to increase the NVIDIA compute infrastructure that's available for the Llama tools that they put forward out there to 350,000 H100 GPUs from NVIDIA. So that's a huge number, right? They're doubling down again on their investment in the infrastructure, which is important to providing the compute necessary to allow more and more applications to have access to these large language models that are running available open source from Meta. Okay, and then lastly from me, and as a cue to come back tomorrow, Anthropic released a meta prompt that solves the blank page problem. And that meta prompt it's actually on a Google Colab research site, and you have to right at the moment you have to use an Anthropic API key to access it. But it basically you give it instructions that are very spare, like this is the task I want to solve, and here's some variables that I want you to consider in doing that. And Anthropic's Claude will then generate all the prompting necessary to achieve that task. So we're getting, again, closer to a much more facile assistant than one which has to be given specific instructions in order to get to where you want to go. So meta prompting is a very big concept that we're going to be talking more and more about, which is giving the large language model the ideas that you want to solve and telling it to generate the prompts to itself that are necessary to do that. So that's that internal reasoning capability. And tomorrow, come back and we'll talk about other ways to solve the blank page problem.
And I think what I want to do for that for tomorrow's show, is because here's what I'm curious about. When you really look at it, Aaron actually copied it and put it into our Teams account that we have, or not Teams, I'm sorry, in Slack account for this show. And when you look at it on his face, it does not look that impressive. What I want to test is go take that exact same language, just create a custom GPT for it. Hey, maybe I'll go create a custom GPT in Copilot as well and compare it back to Claude. Because my impression is, by the way, I love Claude. It is one of my favorite LLMs, but my impression is that it's like, it's a bunch of bells and whistles, and it's weird to me that it's in Colab, that you have to do it in Colab, and it doesn't look that impressive, that there's nothing in there when you look at it that goes, oh my God, this is new and novel. But maybe I'm wrong on that. So I'll be curious to just take the same wording that they have that's basically running in Colab in those directions and create a custom GPT with it and see if we get similar results of better prompting. That'll be, I guess.
But isn't the point of the Colab that it's running on the on Anthropic's API?
Yeah,
so you wouldn't get the same. You wouldn't get the same experience in Colab. You'd be using a different LLM.
Yeah, but can I just run it in Claude?
That's Brian's point, saying, is the prompt language, is the idea of meta prompting equally available in other large language models like GPT-4 Turbo? And if we use the same language instruction, but my hunch, Brian, is that no, Anthropic in releasing this meta prompt approach has done some training for Claude 3 Opus. That and this only works on Opus, by the way, not on the smaller models from Claude Anthropic.
Rob Lennon has been talking about meta prompting and has some things with his community where you can create. He has a thing called Promptimus, where you can create. You say what you want to do, and it generates a meta prompt for you. We would also be remiss if we did not just say character reference, release on Midjourney. Go check it out.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I got two quick ones before we wrap up, but I think are important to cover. Number one, there was a paper released on a hypothesis-driven AI intelligence as an identified subcategory of AI applied to oncology or cancer research, right? Cool. And so, whereas traditional AIs do a fair amount of predictive analysis, it doesn't take it into account the research and thinking process when it comes to medical research. So generating a hypothesis, going through the scientific method and all that kind of process. But this new category of AI looks to make huge inroads because it does focus on that process. So it allows for a more in-depth analysis of coming up with cancer treatments or, reviewing analysis or scans and things like that. So that was number one. I thought that was pretty important. And the EU passed their big AI Act. It went through the Parliament and now just has one more step where it's got to be officially published. And so we're looking around May. And the big highlights of that act is they put in safeguards for general purpose artificial intelligence use, limits on the use of biometric identification systems by law enforcement, a ban on social scoring and AIs used to manipulate or exploit user vulnerabilities, and the right of consumers to launch complaints and receive meaningful explanations of any conflicts that they may have. And while some of those may seem to most people as make sense, this is the kind of things we want to see. We don't have any legislation globally, anyways, that covers these kinds of very clear direction. And so the EU passing this is just one step forward for the rest of the world coming up with their own versions. So I thought that was important.
Yeah, very cool. I only have one last one. Because it's more of a fun one from yesterday. We talk all the time on this show about $1 million ideas, and we give them out for free, guys. I think that's what's we're charitable in that way, and we give out our ideas for free. And here's a perfect example.
Donations, though. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Here's a perfect example of what we said yesterday about tourism and putting on Ray-Ban Meta glasses and it giving you new insights about the things you're seeing if you were going out and do tourism. And by God, they listened to us and released it. And here we go. It now identifies their Meta sunglasses, now identifies landmarks. And it even says here, it almost sounds like it was listening to us. It identifies landmarks in various locations and tells you more about them, acting as a sort of, wait for it, tour guide for travelers. Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth. So Andrew Bosworth, I just want to say thank you for being a loyal listener of our show. We appreciate you. But honestly, if you could just give us a little nudge, a little tip of the cap when you write these things to say, thank God the Daily AI Show is coming up with solid multi-million dollar ideas. Who knows? Maybe $1 billion. We don't know. We're giving them out for free here on the show. And that's really the biggest news of the week, I think, is that we continue to give. And look what these companies are doing. Little old Meta, little old Ray-Ban, just trying to make their way through the world. has gotten a little farther because of the Daily AI Show. So that's it. That's my big thing.
Congratulations.
People laughing about it. Yes, I agree.
Thank you,
I
Mikey.
do want to put this up there too. Jen said way back at the beginning of the show, I love the smell of coffee and the sound of AI news via DOS in the morning. Hey, y'all. So thanks, Jen. We always appreciate seeing you. Christopher Mighty Schwartz, great name. Love seeing you. Love seeing you in the comments as well. Thanks for hanging out with us. We will be back tomorrow to talk about solving for the blank page. So come back and hang out with us then. Until then, guys,
The blank page.
Aloha.